Hey guys, welcome back to Unleashed. And remember, we are the Resistance, and we are glad you're with us today. We are, what is this like? Is this week 2 now in December, Eric? Is that where we're at?
Well, yeah, today's the 9th, so week 2, man.
Yeah, we're there. We've got just a little bit of time left. If you haven't done your Christmas shopping yet, you're way behind my wife. She has like everybody's done. I mean, it's like she's incredible. I don't know how she has her list. They are so organized, you cannot believe it. Are you like one of those people, you have your lists?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, to a point, then I kind of wing it. I'll just kind of go out like I've got these certain people in mind, and then I'll see something that's like, that's perfect.
Yeah. We went down to Hamilton Town Center and did some shopping on Saturday.
Ooh.
Crazy. Oh, yeah. I mean, we're not even, we still got 3 weeks or whatever left, and it was nuts.
Wait, did you even find parking?
Yeah, we had to park all the way around the back of the place, like quite a ways away, behind where if you don't know where it's at, down towards Indianapolis. They have like the dog walking area.
Yeah.
We were parked back in there. And
so you had a long day of carrying bags and
yeah. I think we just bought stock in, what's it called? Is it called Bath and Beyond, or it used to be called
Bath
that?
Body, or is it Bath
Body Works or something? I don't know what. Sorry.
Yeah.
For you guys that are hunters out there, you probably relate to what I just said, and you're probably proud because I don't know the name of it.
Yeah, that's
fair.
Yeah, I mean, it was like Candles Day. Like all candles were like $9.99 instead of $99.99, whatever they are.
That is just fresh hell.
Oh, it was, and I'm carrying these bags. I mean, I'm loaded
clank,
with these bags.
Clank,
yeah,
clanking, yeah.
But to her praise, the house always smells great. The only time that she's not allowed to do that is hunting season. And yeah, that's not a good thing. Well, anyhow, I'm trying to think. We also went and we saw Rebecca St. James. I don't know if you guys remember that name from Christian music.
No.
King and Country.
Well, Rebecca St. James there was a movie that came out. I can't think of the name of
Unsung Hero.
Unsung Hero.
Yep.
And, her family, they were from Australia. Well, put another shrimp on the bowl, B.
Oh,
yeah. And, but they moved here to manage Carmen, I think it was, if I remember right from the movie. And the tour fell through because of some financial things that had happened. And the family got here, and they had no job. They had leased this house. They had no furniture. They were literally making their beds out of clothes they rolled up and put sheets on top of it. No car, nothing. And that family survived. They were in Nashville, of all places, too.
Hey.
And long story short, she ended up getting into Christian. I think maybe she was 13 when they moved there, or 14. But anyhow, she became one of the bigger names in Christian music. So it was a neat story, and it was neat to hear her story live. So that's what we did over the weekend.
Her brothers are King and Country.
Yes, that's right.
The brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, she talked about she had gotten out of Christian music, and she was singing in Alaska with her brothers. They invited her, I think that's what it was. And while she was there, she felt God say, I want you to get back out there and start singing. And she's got, I think, 3 little ones now, and it's not easy being on the road. I mean, that bus life, you're not sleeping well. And if you've got a family, especially being a mom, I mean, how do you do all that and manage? Yeah. I was driving in here, coming across the bridge, listening to Fox News on my radio. And I don't know if any of you guys maybe out there, you've been listening to this, that whole thing with the Daniel Penny case, the Marine that was on was it the New York?
Yeah, on the subway.
Yeah. Protecting these people, and they're trying to, put them in jail for a long time. And I don't know how you guys feel about that. I'm like, we need more guys like that.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the original guy that did that? Was it Benny Getz?
Oh, I forgot about that. And yeah, wow. Getz sounds familiar. I have to look it up maybe here. And we'll...
Yeah, dude. Like he was kind of the original. I'll look it up real quick while you talk for a second.
But I mean, when you've got, in this world we live in now, everybody's scared to go out. I didn't grow up like that. We grew up with our doors unlocked, and we knew our neighbors, and it's just so different now. Yeah. But anyhow, he was found not guilty today, and I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of protests and stuff about that. For me personally, I think it was the thing that had to happen. If not, who's going to step up and help anybody anymore in this world?
What did happen? So I'm out of touch with Fox
News. There was a guy, he got onto the subway, and he was threatening everybody. He said someone's going to die, and he's threatening all these people and women, little children and babies, and he stepped in and put the guy down and put a chokehold on him to hold him in place until the police could get there.
Okay.
And he was drugs in his system, all kinds of stuff, but he ended up passing away. He still had a heartbeat when the police got there, but he passed away. So they were trying him for some type of a murder charge.
Involuntary manslaughter or
some
something
kind of
like that.
Yeah.
some homicide or
Wow.
something, man.
And then the other thing that I just heard, they caught the gunman who shot that CEO.
I knew they identified him. Did they actually catch
Well,
him? though?
yeah. I mean, here's what they're saying on that. If you haven't been listening to this at all, he had shot the CEO and escaped on this e-bike or whatever they call them, and he had a backpack and he ditched it and they found it. It had Monopoly money in it, and his shell casings had words written that you would have maybe with insurance, words like deny, kind of words. And they got all these images of him where he had pulled his mask down. Well, they found him today in Altoona, Pennsylvania. A McDonald's worker saw this guy and called the police and said, "I think this is who you're looking for." And so he had, passports and illegal, what do you call it? Fake ID that he used in that, what's it called? A hostel or whatever he stayed at.
Yeah.
He had that and a gun and a silencer. I mean, unless he was set up, I think this is probably the guy.
Probably the guy.
Anyhow, that is the world that we live in. And wow. So do you ever wish you could go back sometimes? Just a little bit of a different time in your life when it just wasn't so nuts.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
I'm born out of era.
Yeah. Oh, we need heroes like, those guys are willing to step up. You look at some of the World War II generation. They were awesome.
Oh, yeah.
They're 16 volunteer and lying about their age to go fight overseas. It's like, do we still have those kind of men?
Private Ryan, that is a great job of what that was like on D-Day. That amphibious invasion, I believe that's what they refer to it as, the Normandy invasion.
Yeah.
Insane.
That was crazy.
Speaking of amphibious, was it Clyde Drexler one time, the basketball player, was being interviewed because he made an opposite hand layup. And they interviewed him afterwards and they said, "That was like your opposite hand." He says, "Yeah, don't you know I'm amphibious?" It's supposed to be ambidextrous.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. You got to look that up if you haven't seen it. It's funny.
Nice.
Yeah, well, anyhow, there's our comedy relief for now.
Yeah.
But, man, I want to tell you about today's guest. We've got Jerry Welter with us, and lives about 30 minutes away. And we met Jerry. First of all, great to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be
And
here.
was it in Muncie?
It was. On one of Blood and Fire was holding an event. Men Leading Men. It was
Men Leading Men. That's
were,
right.
Yep.
Yeah, I forget. That's right.
Blood and Fire.
And we met, started talking about our passions for ministry and men and all this kind of stuff. And Jerry got me one of his books. And so I'll put this up so you can see. We'll talk more about this. And I'll let you kind of talk about it here in a minute. But let me kind of start off on the back. We've got the his biography. And I said, what do you want me to say about you? And most guys are like, you know what, just whatever. I don't need to have my name put up in lights. But let me just kind of give you an idea of who Jerry is. He's the former director of the New Life Center for the Muncie Missions Ministries. He is a preacher of the transforming truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He enjoys time in the ocean. Yeah, me too. And on the beach with his wife. I don't enjoy time with your wife on the beach, but mine, I do. And Jerry and his wife, how do you say her last name?
Yolanda. Her name's Yolanda.
Okay.
We call her Yo.
Okay.
She goes by Yo.
And when you're really mad, she's Yo-Yo.
Yeah.
Hey, Yo-Yo. And they reside, you guys in Muncie?
Yep, we're in Muncie, Indiana. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, North Muncie. Yep.
Yeah, Muncie is like, people forget about it. You've got Indianapolis and Fort Wayne, but Muncie's kind of like right off the highway by about 15 minutes or something. And
That's about exactly right.
yeah, it's a
15
neat
minutes
town.
From 69 into town. Yep.
Well, let's kind of get into this. So tell me, for our listener who, and I want to learn more. We've had a lot of phone conversations, but tell me more about, like your background. Like, did you grow up in Muncie?
Nope.
Okay,
I was actually born in North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, naval base.
You were born at
So,
the naval
yeah,
base?
Yep. My dad is a Vietnam veteran.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
That's where the journey started. I am not native to Indiana by any stretch. And then from there, my dad's side of the family is actually from Montana. We're from Plentywood originally. I came here to start school when my parents separated. So I landed here because my parents separated. Mom goes back to mom
Right.
and dad, and she was from Indiana, and that's how I ended up here. I remember actually starting school. I came down here from Montana in my rhinestone shirt, and I was not
a rhinestone cowboy.
Exactly. They're like, "Where are you from?"
Was
Like,
that Glenn
"I'm from
Campbell?
That is a good question. Who did sing
I
that?
think that was Glenn Campbell. Anyhow, he'll look it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, Montana came here at their divorce because the Vietnam really took a toll on Dad. He was a medical corpsman in Vietnam. So he went through basic training twice through the Navy, and then he had to go through the Marine basic training if you're going to be a corpsman in Vietnam. And so he spent a lot of time in the fields and stuff, and he just came back, and it really took a toll on him, took a toll on the marriage. I think there was a lot of drug use and things, probably trying to medicate from all of that. And then he was diagnosed with cancer when I was around 8 or so, 7 or 8. I think I was 7 when we found out that he was diagnosed with cancer, because he took us and my brothers all on this big trip. We went all over the United States, seen the Grand Canyon, took us all over because he knew that was going to be the last time.
Oh man.
Yeah, and then he died 2 years later.
Was it connected to Nam at all, or?
Yeah, they think it was the Agent Orange
Orange.
because he was a lot in the field.
I've
as a
talked
medical
about,
corpsman.
my wife Stacy, she never knew who her dad was, and just about maybe 4 years ago we did a DNA thing, that I forget what it was called. And they were able to locate, and he had passed away 10 years ago. But he had been in Nam, and it was a process of time, but it was the cancer that got him from the Agent Orange.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bad
those guys
stuff.
that were out there in the field a lot, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Was Ancestry.com, is that what she did?
Yep, that was it. There's like another one's like, what's it called? Like something in me.
23 and me.
23 in me.
And by the way, yes, that is Glenn Campbell.
Was Glenn Campbell. Well, I haven't lost all my brain cells. That's good.
Hey, we're doing good for guys. We got a lot of conversation. We're actually staying on cue. That's amazing but so that's how I ended up here in Indiana. A result of Vietnam and then the separation. My grandparents, I actually have 2 half brothers. One of them is in Montana. He keeps sending me a picture of him on a lake. I don't know what that's all about. All I ever see is his feet and the lake in front of him. I don't.
Yeah, I have a friend from
He's
Montana. They send me
retired.
the same kind of pictures. I'm like, are you just like trying to rub it in?
He's a little.
Or do you not wear shoes? I don't know.
My dad married twice, so they're my older half brother. So he's retired. But yeah, that's all I ever get. A pair of shoes in the lake.
Montana's gorgeous.
Oh, it is beautiful.
Do you stay in touch with him at all? I mean,
My oldest brother, I do. Yeah. My middle brother, not so much. I don't know what's up with him, but he
Yeah.
did 20 years in the military, and I don't ever hear from him.
Yeah.
But-
I think we all have those relatives. It's like you have some that stay really close and some like, man, I haven't heard from them for, 20 years.
Yeah, I do not know what's up with Joel. Maybe I'll send him this podcast and say, "Hey, bro, what's going on?"
The older you get, I know for me, I made a couple of posts today on Facebook, and it was really about investing in others. I think the older you get, relationships,
Yeah.
they matter. I mean, they really do matter. And it's like, maybe if you're hearing this too, man, don't be that person, reach out, and even just say, man, how are you doing? It's been too long. I wish my parents were here, like you were talking about, because I'm sure if you could go back, what kind of questions would you have for your dad? Like what his life was like?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And that left a lot. That left a huge void, as we talked about. And you talk a lot about our identity in Christ and stuff, and men especially. When you grow up without a father, it's like most of my life. It's like, who am I? Who am I really created to be?
Yep.
What was my father like? What's it like to be a man? Those hard questions that we stuff because we don't want to admit that we're vulnerable there. Like there's something missing here, and as a man, we want to try and mask that.
We always say, I probably said it when I was speaking up in Muncie. I always say, what a child almost always knows about God comes through their earthly father. And if you had a distant father, you probably see God as distant. If he was abusive, you might see God as just waiting to get you. But if he was close, maybe you know. But that's how much power. And that's why I was wondering, because you told me today about losing your dad. Was it 20 years ago?
Oh, it would have been.
Or is it more than that?
Oh, it's been a long time. So I was 9. I am 55.
Wow, you're old. I got you beat.
I know, but you're a model. You're like, hey, you can be in great shape. What are you, 59?
That's 64. But that's the fear. That's like, okay, I want to keep doing this stuff I love to do.
Yeah, for
Anyhow,
sure.
Another podcast.
Yeah, right. But so I was 9. So it's been many decades ago that.
What when you think back about your life, and that's what I want to get into here in a second. What kind of an impact when you lost him? How long would you say that it took for that to really start to affect you?
It's affected me my whole life, but I will say this. There was, I want to say 3 or 4 years, I think, where I kept expecting him to come back.
Oh, man.
And it hit me. I remember where I was standing. I believe I was in the 8th grade, standing in the living room. I remember looking at Mom and said, he ain't coming back, is he? And I just busted out into tears because the reality hit that he's just not coming back. He's really gone. But I was bullied a lot because I didn't have a dad. That was the big thing, is They pick on me. Hey, he doesn't have a dad. He didn't have anyone to go to, turn to, whatever. And I didn't know how to navigate that. My brothers were gone. They're not in our lives. And so I finally came to the place at the age of 15, if you can't beat them, join them. And that was the worst decision
Yep.
I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
And I ended up in a boys' home out of it. I got hooked up with the wrong guys. I got hooked into drugs and things I, would never do. I wasn't attracted to that lifestyle. Actually, at the age of, I think I was 12 or 13, I was in church and I felt the call to be a pastor. I remember where I was sitting. My mom remembers the event because she said, she looked at me and it looked like I was in a trance. And then I looked over at her and I said, I think that's what I'm supposed to do.
Wow.
And
12 or 13.
12 or 13 when that happened. Yep.
Yeah, I think I was 12 when I got baptized. And that's when I kind of, maybe for the first time, I began, maybe similar story, kind of starting to I mean, I believed in God, but it's like, what do you have for my life? I think you start thinking that way when you get to your teens because you're wondering, what will I be?
Yeah.
What will I do in this life? Will I become president? It's like, oh, dear God, no.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. Wouldn't wish that on anybody. But I got into the drugs. I gave into the group. So I never became a pastor per se. Now I do preach. Now it's on the book. I do go to different churches and stuff. I'm passionate about the Word of God. I'm passionate about truth. And we can navigate towards that as how the book was formed from that. But yeah, I got into that lifestyle. And it wasn't until late 20s that God really began. I tried to come out of it, but the addiction took over. And that's the danger of drug addiction, is that the addiction takes over, and even though you want out, you can't get out because it has such a pull on your life. But thank God, 24 years now, it's clean and sober.
That's
no,
awesome.
No relapses, no reoccurrences.
I remember you telling me when I was up there in Muncie and you began, and I was looking at you going, you? Because sometimes you think in your mind what that's going to look like, right?
Right.
And, being with the Christian Center here where we do the podcast, we see a lot of hurting men,
Yes.
and sometimes women out in the street here. And, there's just that, I don't want to say like a look, it's that beaten down,
Yeah.
hopeless,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And I guess you kind of in your mind, but one of the things that was it Rob Spalding, who was the director here of the Christian Center. We had him on a couple of weeks ago. And interestingly enough, he said a lot of these guys, the reason why they are the way they are was the abuse either they experienced from their father or they saw in the home
Yes.
from the father. That's the kind of impact. And so they don't trust anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I see, whenever I worked in a homeless shelter, they had recovery plan there too. And every time I see somebody come in, I see myself. But I get told that a lot. Like, we would never imagine you. I had to convince the director. I'm like, I was just like that. I mean, I've had teeth busted out and everything else. And they're like, there's just no way. They can't imagine me being homeless or with, living that lifestyle. And it's, I guess on one hand, it shows you what God can do. But I've definitely been there, and it's kind of interesting when you got to convince somebody. You won't believe it. Yes, I was there. I was that guy.
Yeah, because we're busy trying to convince everybody, I'm really a good person.
yeah. Usually it's the other way. Yeah.
Let me tell you where I've been.
Yeah.
We were talking on the phone today earlier, and you were going back and forth, and you said, at one point, I don't know how old you were in your journey. Was it in your 20s? But you made this vow, like you're mad at God. And
16.
Oh, it was that young.
16. I was 16 years old. I will never forget that. I stepped outside. I looked up in heaven and said, I will never serve you. So mad. I was blaming God for the loss of my dad, all the things. And that was my vow that I would never. But isn't that a picture of the grace of God, though?
Well, let me ask you a question about that. I remember when I was probably about that same age, maybe 15, I was walking some of the, the streets in the little town that I grew up in with maybe 3 or 4 other guys, and they were trying to be cool, and I wouldn't say that they were religious. They didn't talk about it, but for some reason, I don't know how this came out, but they mentioned some guy who was our age who was hearing the call in his life. He wanted to grow up to be a preacher, and I made some derogatory comment about it, and that I don't know why I did, because I was a believer. I grew up in church, just trying to fit in or be cool or something, and that comment haunted me for decades. And I felt like, does God remember that? That I said that one time, and I think many of us, we look at those things in our life and we're going, does God still hold me, I don't want to say hostage to that, like I'm holding that over your head?
Right.
Did you feel anything like that for a while? Like, did it disqualify you?
There was, I think that was my second time actually. I rejected God many times, but you just brought back a memory. I remember sitting in a juvenile cell, and a preacher came in and asked me if I wanted to accept Christ, and I said, no way. So my heart was just so hard. Um, I don't know that I could feel anything, Brent, to be honest with you. I just don't think I was feeling anything. I think I was more like a hedonist, someone who's just so driven for pleasure.
And your heart
And
was so calloused.
yeah, I couldn't feel anything. But God began, what was it? I remember I was 20 something and I did something similar. I like cursed God again, like, hey, and that now that haunts me. Like, man, it's God. I blasphemed God. How many times have you heard that, especially as a pastor? Like, I've blasphemed God. You don't understand. I've sealed the deal. It's done. I mean, and I met a guy. I was 21 years old. Now I'm still in drinking and whatnot, but I met a guy and he started evangelizing to me. And I had this thought, maybe God isn't done. Maybe God is trying to bring me back. And he was persistent enough that he actually pierced that darkness. But yes, there was a time I thought, man, I went too far. You don't understand. I've gone too far. And just convinced in my own mind that salvation is beyond me, even if I wanted it. And if that isn't a lie from the pit of hell, I don't know what is. But he broke that darkness, but then it was like 7 years after that. I even got baptized. That guy baptized me. But I went back into drinking, back into fornicating, running around, all these things. And I finally had like a near-death experience. I'd overdosed on Xanaxes, woke up in a puddle of blood. My head was the size of a basketball. I didn't even go to the ER.
Wow.
I got a scar here. My teeth went through my lips. I felt like I broke
my
the
word.
wrist. My sister seems to think I was riding a mountain bike through Anderson, of all places. Here we are to testify to the grace of God. But she thinks I was hit by a car and just left for dead. And it's quite possible because the drugs I was on, I probably rode right out in front of somebody, passed out, probably got hit by the car.
Wow.
So went home, grabbed a bag of ice, put it on my head, and
here, just put a Band-Aid on
hopefully
it.
I'll wake up.
Let the dog lick it. You'll be good.
Exactly.
Oh my
Hopefully I'll wake
gosh.
up. That was just couch surfing back then anyways. But I remember the next day thinking, I think that was God saying, here's your second chance. You need to wake up. So that was the beginning of the end of the addiction and my really journeying towards God.
So your dad had passed away. You're going through this hard time. Where was your mother in all this?
So I'd kind of ostracized. I had definitely separated that relationship, stealing the car from her and things like that, and couch surfing there. And I was living in northern Indiana a lot of that time during this time, from about 20 to 28, 29. I lived in Kendallville, Walketville, LaGrange.
Oh, yeah.
Worked in
LaGrange.
Topeka, Goshen. I was all up in there making my mess, continuing in my addiction and stuff. And then just back and forth. So she had remarried when I was in my late 20s. So she was kind of busy with her life, new husband. And I was just kind of, like I said, on the periphery of her life.
Were you going through any of the programs at that point, like AA kind of stuff?
Never did, but I will tell you this. My mom shared something with me once I did finally surrender to Christ. She said, and it was after I had that wreck, that bike wreck. She saw how I was. She said that Satan's trying to get my son, and I'm not going to let him have him. And she called every prayer chain, she said, and she could think of across the country and had me put on that prayer list.
Wow.
And I was miraculously delivered. And I'm going to say that was because of Mom's prayers.
Sometimes it's hard, when because your kids have to go through their own. We all do. We have to go through stuff, but it's so hard to go, okay, God, I'm taking my hands out of this and I'm giving them to you.
Yeah.
And I know that feeling.
I had to do that with my own daughter. She actually she was drinking a lot and actually hit a telephone pole so hard that the front bumper was touching the back bumper.
Oh, my word.
Dropped the transformer, everything, and walked away from it. And when we saw the car, I was like, wow.
Somebody's hand was on you.
And I saw the blood on the steering wheel. I remember to forget that because where the airbag had ejected. And I remember that, I'm in a covenant with God.
It's like we have to hit bottom. I've talked about that so many times on here. Is hitting bottom a good thing or a bad thing? It stinks when you're going through it. And you and I were talking on the phone today earlier, and we were talking about how the judgment of God, and we were
Yeah.
going back, well, did God judge me for that comment that I made? Did he judge me for those, you name it, whatever the things were that
Right.
any of us did. And I think the most powerful thing in the universe, I mean, the love of God, but the grace that he has given us to go, you know what? I know your story.
Yeah.
I know what brought you to that point, and I want you to know I grieve over that. But God, for whatever his purposes are, when he allows things as they begin to happen, his grace has a way of taking glue and taking all the broken pieces. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
And he puts our lives back together. But here's the thing. It's better. Isn't there like some
That's
kind
true.
of pottery? It's like Japanese pottery or something. When it's broken, they can put it back together, but you have to have gold to put the broken pieces. That's what fuses the pottery
wow.
back together. And somehow that happens, and now that pottery, which broken, which was maybe worth $10, now is because it's got all the gold in it. It's priceless.
Wow.
And when you look at your life and you see what God has done and how he's put us back together, you're on here today telling your story. This is absolutely going to reach some people that
And that
needed to hear
gold
this.
is the grace of God. Is that what you're what you
Well,
get
the
out of that? That's
value.
interesting. Yeah, the value for sure.
Yeah, because he put himself in you to bring you back together because you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
So now you are invaluable. I mean, Christ being in you,
Right.
there's nothing that
Yeah,
you can
there's
do
the
or
go-
say
yeah,
that
the
can
gold.
make God love you more, and there's nothing you can say or do that can make God love you less.
Mm-hmm.
And when we finally understand that, it's like, I don't want to do that stuff anymore.
And we talked about the bema seat of Christ too, because we're wondering, is God
Yes.
going to bring? Is that going to be the place where, oh, here it comes, all the junk's going to come up at
Here's
the,
your list.
at the judgment seat? But I've done a lot of study on that, and I've listened to different pastors, and I've looked at different research, and I've really done my homework because you never want to communicate something theologically that could mislead somebody, and that's kind of the precipice of the book.
Yeah.
But that judgment seat is actually that bema seat where rewards are given. It's not a place of condemnation. Granted, there will be some loss, but it's not the place where we talked about that cosmic flat screen where all your sins are. That's not the bema seat. The bema seat is where we're rewarded for the things we did for Christ.
And
But it's
I
not a
wouldn't
place
want to
of-
be on the unbeliever's side.
I would not either. No, and that should motivate us to evangelize. But I think when you think of the bema seat and you think of rewards, doesn't that motivate you to just want to do all the more? It's like a motivator.
Well,
It's like,
running the race, finishing the race,
Yes.
the prize, and Paul talks about all this stuff.
yeah.
But you know what? Okay, honest confession here. I don't ever think about that, about
Okay.
the rewards. I don't even know. I don't think I've ever thought about that in my life. And that is
Really?
straight up truth.
Huh.
I've never thought about, like, what am I going to get from this? I know what I was given.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's because of what I know that I was given. I want people to know that they have the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know what you've been forgiven of, and you see others struggling, you have legitimate care for what their story was. I made some post today too about coaching that it was just what I love about coaching is I get to see people's lives changed.
Mm-hmm. And that is that is a reward. Didn't Paul say that aren't you us, our crown, our joy, our reward? So I think people are definitely probably going to be a part of that reward. And I don't want to use that as a motivator. If we're doing good, we're doing good because we've been changed by the grace of God. And I totally agree with that. What is it that they say? We're not saved by works, but a faith that saves results in good works.
Yeah. We talked before, you have imputed righteousness where when the moment you believe, God puts his promised Holy Spirit in you, and then you have imparted righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's God within you moving to go and do good things, because on our own, we would never choose that. The flesh wants the bad stuff, right?
And I think that's the redemptive side of it, is he takes our story, the broken pieces of our lives, and then he uses that to present his gospel message of grace.
And if
that's
you don't
really
tell your story,
yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah.
God,
You're the message.
yes.
You're the message.
Yeah. I hope you guys are hearing this, and I hope you're getting encouraged out of this, because it doesn't matter what's happened in your life. God has put this message within you, and I've said it, I think it was on one of the podcasts I had, it was called To Be Told, that your story was meant to be told, because if you don't, and the enemy shuts you up, guess what? He's silencing that glory of God in your life. Is that really what any of us want?
And there's no story that's insignificant.
None.
And I think that would probably hinder some people. They think, well, my story isn't that impressive.
Have you ever had someone come up to you and they go, Well, I've never done that. My story isn't
Mm,
anything like, I was in the streets or I did this sin and I did that sin. And I want to look at him and go, I'm sorry you didn't experience that because it will change you. I'm not saying run out and do it. No, but Paul talks about that in Romans 7. Should I go and sin more so grace may
right,
abound? No.
right.
But it's only when you've hit these bottoms. Anyhow, let's go into your
Yeah,
book because this
yeah,
is really important stuff.
yeah.
When Jerry gave me a copy of his book, The Navigators, Letter Misled, by the way, his new podcast is going to be coming out in January,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And that is called Letter
Let him
Misled.
listen. Yep.
Is there a release date in January or is it, you don't
Not
have that
don't
yet?
have anything. It's all tentative at the moment. It
Okay.
just depends on how soon my wife can.
Well, we
help
we
me.
can let you know
Yeah.
on here too, but it's going to be called Letter Misled. I love
But
that.
obviously, I would like to have things up and running by the first week of January. So for sure, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I was attracted to when you handed me this book and you began to tell me there's a picture of you on the back. You must have been snorkeling and stuff.
Yep.
But there's something about the ocean I think that draws all of us because even when I was a kid, I'd go and I'd sit on the beach and I'd look out there and I'd go, God, how big are you? Where are you? What should I be doing with my life? What plan do you have for me? And because that ocean just seems endless, it just makes God seem big, which he is.
Right.
And when you were telling me, I said, so tell me a little bit about the book. And you said, well, like the turtles. I don't know. He goes, how much do you know about these turtles when they're born?
Yeah.
And I said, well, tell me about that. And that's kind of the backdrop, a little bit of the book.
That is the narrative. Because I wanted to use the Matrix. I wanted to show how the machine of media
Right.
misleads us and how we're being, poisoned and persuaded by,
Anderson.
by politicians, and how our kids are even being influenced by politicians and not their parents. Sometimes I want to use the word predators
Yeah.
because people don't realize that politicians they're not parents. God gave, and we're trying to remove the parents' influence from the home. Even the animal kingdom teaches us that.
Yeah.
How do animals survive in the wild? Their parents. And so parents are a necessity, but it's almost like we're trying to convince the population that that's just not true. And then these kids are trying to make decisions on their own. Grown up, their brains aren't even developed yet. They don't have life experiences. So led or misled comes in because I was someone who was misled. And then, like I said, I wanted to use the movie The Matrix because the red or the blue pill. I just love
Right.
that.
Right.
Do you want to know the truth and wake up to the truth? Or do you want to take this blue pill and keep believing your truth or whatever is true? Whether it's true or not, you're just going to believe that. And so many people today, they're taking the blue pill.
Yep.
There's no need for an objective truth.
Well, and I think they take the blue pill sometimes too, is because if I can stay dumb to this, there's nothing expected.
I'm not accountable.
I'm not accountable.
Yeah, and that goes back to the judgment seat of the unbeliever. We are going to be held accountable at Sunday. There will be an accounting for that.
Was it in our conversation we had today? We were talking about once you know you have a problem, it's now a choice.
Yes, I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah, like an addiction or whatever. Well, I've got this. Well, now that you know what it is, now you're choosing it.
And every chapter in the book is actually not a chapter. It's actually a choice. Choice 1, choice 2. And I think there's 11 choices throughout the book.
So tell
So
them
it's
a
a
little
change.
bit about this. Because the picture you've got the moon shining,
Yeah.
and you've got it glowing on the beach, and then you have this town which is dimly lit behind it.
Yep. So we're in Gulf Shores, Alabama. So like I said, I was struggling with that red and blue. And if you notice, we do have the red is in lead and the misled is in blue. So we were able to use the red and blue without too much infringement. Don't think I'm going to get a call from the, I forget their names now, the Wachowski sisters.
Oh.
I don't think I'll be getting a phone call. We stayed away from their narrative. But God was reminding me of a time I had in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And I saw these sea turtles. I remember I was walking along the beach and I'm looking up along the coastline there, and there's all these little nets that have been little areas they'd been sectioned off. And I didn't know what they were. I'm from Indiana, man, so
Right.
I'm like, and even when I'm in Florida, I've never seen it. And they're like, oh, those are sea turtle nests. And so long story short, we were able to actually watch what they call a boil when the sea turtles actually come and they hatch and they break the sand.
And you got to see that.
We got to see it.
How cool is that?
Yeah, we were there with the conservation officer. She goes, I got to be here for this. And that's what I was reminded. She goes, I have to be here. And I said, what's going on? And she says, if I'm not here, they're going to end up all over the parking lot because they're supposed to follow the moonlight out to sea. But because of the condos and the parking lots and the cars, she goes, the next morning, they will be everywhere. None of them. Maybe I think it's like 1% make it to the ocean, and they come out and they call it a boil, and that's it. They're boiling out of the ground like popcorn. They're just pop. But she would shine this red light, and that's where I got the red lead. She would shine that red light right in front of them, and they would just follow her little red light all the way. And everyone had them. There was a bunch of us. I mean, there was a community there. I think there was 4 in my party and maybe 5 or 7 people, and everyone was getting red lights and shining them right in front of these turtles, and they would just follow them all
And
the way.
isn't there some ordinance like when they're hatching at nighttime?
You can't touch them. Is that? Oh, I'm sorry. I
Well,
shouldn't let you
like the
finish.
lights being on, like they have to, because if they go the wrong way, they're going to die. They have to get to the ocean and follow that moon.
Yeah, I don't know if there is. They don't really follow it very much because all the
Money.
condos. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's there with her light, and that red light drowns out the other lights, which is interesting.
It's interesting for me because what you just said, you know how something will trigger something in your head? We're called to be the light, but the world, I think you talk about this in the book, what was it, water? What was it about? Which one are you choosing? Wow, I have to go back in the
The
book.
light of the world, or the lights in the world, or
Yeah, I think it was something about that. And when you think about it, we're called to point people in the right direction like she was.
Right. Yeah. Right. We are to be the light. But what's interesting though is the blue comes into play because on the color spectrum, blue is the dominating light, whether it's natural light or artificial light. And I got thinking, well, how much blue light are we being affected by today? iPhones, iPads.
Yeah.
And so there was the red and blue. The red stands for the words of Jesus, that objective truth that we need for our lives. Because we're just like those sea turtles. We just see the light and we lock onto it and we follow that thing with total abandonment. But we're warned in Proverbs that there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And how many times have we been following a dream or a vision or a goal or whatever, and it seemed right, it felt right. Even people were coach, you're on the right track. And then at the end, everything goes up in flames. And you're like,
So
how could I
it's
have
it's
navigated that?
the red light then that keeps them on track to get them back to where it's kind of like the red
Yep.
states.
Yeah.
It's a joke. Sorry,
I
Eric should
mind it.
appreciate that
I
one.
would like that. I'm good with that. And it's funny you mentioned that because red and blue, I have to clarify, we're in the very beginning of the book, that it's not a book on politics.
Right. I just
Red.
sometimes things are best left unsaid, but sometimes my humor just comes out. So,
That was great.
so you talk in the book then about which light are you following?
Yeah. Because, it's funny, God refers to us as sheep. And there's a story I tell in there.
That's so bad. Sorry, it's one of those bad dad jokes.
There's a story in there, though, I tell about sheep where there was 50, I think it was in eastern Turkey, and there was like 14 or 1,500 sheep involved. 400 of them, while the shepherds are having breakfast, 400 sheep wander off, and they literally wander off and fall into a ravine, and they die. The other 1,100 follow them, but they don't die, but they all end up in the ravine. But the other 1,100 survived because the first 400 broke the fall of the.
Only land on top of them.
And they land, yeah, exactly. Every single one of them, just one wandered off. I guess we're all, hey, that's what we're. But isn't that the way it is today? What's trending? What's trending? Let's just follow what's trending. I'm going to find my fulfillment and my passion and my purpose in what's trending. I think a lot of times.
Yeah. And in a weird way, we can look at the culture, what's been happening with all this woke stuff and things that people have been following and getting lured into following the wrong light.
Mm-hmm.
And when the bottom began to fall out, I mean, literally people's lives are being destroyed and families are being destroyed through all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, in a one way, you have to look at it because our nation needed something to bring us back to the table, to look face to face, eye to eye with each other, get into each other's worlds. And politics and all this kind of stuff has been dividing us.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, those first ones that went over the cliff, in a way, caught our attention.
Yeah.
And the rest of us, maybe some of us were starting to fall, but that wake-up call, that light that led us saying, this is the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need that objective truth, and that's the Word of God. And that's kind of what I'm trying to, promote in the book, is the need for an objective, that unbiased truth that says this is the right way, walk in it. And that will help us filter out, because when we get confused, like, well, is this Jesus? Because Satan masquerades as an angel of light. So how do we know if we're being led by Jesus even?
Yeah.
When you got Satan mimicking every move.
Yep.
If it lines up with truth, then we know we're following the light.
Yep. It's funny. I just go back. It's just that political season. You had someone saying one thing in politics, and then the other person would say the same thing. It's like, which one am I supposed to believe here? Who said it first? Whatever's going on. We
That's
talk
right.
about this in here a lot. Whenever we have that unhealthy emotion that we have, well, how do we know that that thought that created it, did it come from God or did it come from Satan? Well, again, what's the emotion that you had? What did it create? Did it create the deeds of the flesh, things like lust, envy, rage, or
Right.
did it create joy or peace or self-control? And that's one of the ways we talk about which light am I following. So let me
good.
just say something, guys.
good.
I wanted Jerry to come on here in this month with Christmas because I just thought this was perfect. With we're going to be sharing. Maybe your family is going through the book of Luke right now, and you're leading up to the birth of Jesus. I would invite you guys to do that with your families. Men, sit down with your wives and just open it up. Even with me, instead of the translations in my Bible are so tiny, I have to get my phone out, right, and pull this thing out. But that's one of the things that I do is we'll get it out, and we're going through Luke right now because men, I think we are called to be the light to our families. You've heard Jerry talk on here a lot about his brokenness and his life, and I think we do have a world that wants to crucify Christians. Because the light, for those that aren't walking in the light, it hurts, but it's a beautiful thing when you realize that pain that you're feeling because of maybe your actions. That's when you think about God's conviction. It's not God's condemnation. That light, God's trying to say to you, no, if you're in the right light.
Yeah.
You talked about blue light, and I was Googling one time about, if I'm sending an email to someone and I want to communicate a point, is there a certain color text that might soften the truth? What I mean, like not make it so hard to hear.
Right.
And it was blue.
Interesting.
If you're trying to put across a point in something to be tender or compassionate with someone, blue text was the color. Isn't
Interesting.
that interesting?
That's very interesting.
Well, before we finish up, again, Led or Misled is going to be the podcast that Jerry will be starting here coming up. And Eric, are you producing that? I think you are, aren't you?
Yep, it's going to be right here in the studio.
Awesome. And you can put some information up, and we can put it up later in that. And I'll put a picture of the book and stuff up on the podcast for those of you that are looking at it on YouTube. And be sure to go on there. Give us a like, give us a follow. You can find the audio on Spotify or anywhere that you listen to those. And I wanted to say something at the very end of this today. I mentioned to you I had made this social media post, and Jerry with his book, and we've talked. He felt that call of God, back to his life, and God was saying, I don't care what you've done. You think about the woman at the well. God totally rocked her world, right? He changed her life with grace, and she goes back to her village, and everyone's changed because they're going, how can this be? And she was trained. And here's the thing, too. The moment you receive Christ as Lord and Savior, and you choose Him, you're not transformed. You're transfigured. Transformation is maybe changing those bad habits you've gotten into or whatever the things you struggle with over time. But the core of who you are, your spirit, that's where Christ comes in. The moment you receive Him and you truly believe in your spirit, in that moment, God puts His promised Holy Spirit, which transfigures you. You are no longer who you once were. You might still struggle with sin, but that's not your one true identity. And as you were hearing his story today and all the pain, maybe some of you guys can relate to that. And I was bullied too. You talked about being bullied, and I hated myself. I was the skinniest, smallest little kid in my school, and I hated myself. And so I grew up in Pennsylvania. Hunting the outdoors became big to me. And so this was a post that I made today. I just want you to hear this as we finish up. I was standing in the kitchen today, and I said, I've been asked many times how using hunting and fitness can reach the lost for Christ. And I said, I can answer that. I'm passionate about the outdoors, and I'm passionate about taking care of the body God gave me. They both hold special places in my life, and they hold a special place in many others' lives. It's about relatable passions. However, I'm more passionate about the one who created the outdoors and gave me this body, and I'm commanded to take care of both. God is the one who put His calling on my heart, and I've watched Him lead over 20,000 men, women, and children give their life to Jesus through this ministry. That's my answer. The very beginning, how can we be using hunting and fitness, as part of your ministry? It's about that relatability that you have. People that love that kind of stuff, you have a door open to them, which many other people can't get in because they know you relate and they trust you. And then I finished it up with this. I said, in what area of your life are you seeing God use you to glorify Him? If you're not sure, I want to encourage you. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to ask God what the plans are that he has for you. You know, there's nothing more fulfilling than finding and following that purpose that he has for you. So don't let the enemy tell you anything different. God has you here for this time, for his purpose right now. And I want to end again with the way that I do so many days. And I want you to think about this. When a man knows who he is in Christ, that he's been created in the image of the living God, when he is no longer held captive by the opinions of others or cares whether he lives or dies, that man is now extremely dangerous for good, because he's been unleashed. Jerry is a man who has been unleashed. You've heard his story. He's out there making a difference. And the purpose that we have might look different as far as the way that we go about doing it with our gifts and our talents and the things that we have. But that relatability that we have with others, many times that's where God's going to put you, because you have something that they can look at, model after, and go, how did you get there? And I think you heard it today, you know, at following the light. When you think about this navigation that we have in his book, The Navigators, we're talking about which light are you following? I just want to encourage you, follow the one who made everything there is. And don't worry about what other people say. Whatever he sent you, you do it. That's the roar within. We'll see you next time, guys.